Hey there, everyone. Welcome to yet another Discover Your Thing session. My name is Kelvin, and in today's session, I will be learning tRPC with Anthony. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, going good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just excited to be type safe end to end.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, before we get into the whole type safety tRPC, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us who Anthony is, what you do, what you've been doing, and so on.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Anthony. I work at Purcell, and I'm a content engineer right now. In the past, I played professional baseball, and I taught myself web development while I was playing. And yeah, I really enjoy getting to help folks out with Next.js, Turbo Repo, incoming Turbo Pack, and I'm also a member of the tRPC core team.
Oh,
So that's what we're going to talk about here today.
nice. I like it. So yeah, you taught yourself how to do web development when you're playing basketball, right?
Baseball.
Oh, baseball. Cool. That's really
Yeah.
nice. So how was your learning journey? Did you go to like a boot camp or what? How did you get started?
I Most people don't know this, but when you play professional baseball,
Mm-hmm.
like your first year of playing, you make like $6,000. The most
Oh,
you can make while you're in the minors is like $12,000. It only gets like glitz and glamour once you're on TV, but
okay.
um, for probably like 5 or 6 years, you're struggling to make money. So yeah, I was struggling, and I needed to figure out something that I could do, freelance on my own time. My real job was playing baseball,
Mm-hmm.
so something I could figure out to do on my own time, and programming looked interesting to me for a long time. So web dev was something that I figured out I could do on my own time. So I opened up Free Code Camp, and just started going on that until I, experimented enough times and failed enough times to be able to write something that worked.
Nice. Wow, it's so amazing how you've moved from like a baseball to free code camp and now you core team of tRPC also work at Vassell. That's just amazing. Yeah, it just shows the power of like learning on the internet and stuff. Amazing. Yeah. And speaking
Yeah.
about learning on the internet, it's what so I reached out, I've heard a lot of buzz about tRPC and I am the traditional REST based API guy, and I've seen it. I've seen a lot. I think there are like stacks about it, like T3 stacks and all of that. So I'll be like, okay, what is tRPC like? How? What's the problem it's solving? Because of course we have REST, right? We have GraphQL. Why do we need another RPC based implementation of how to get data? So yeah, what is your PC and what is it solving in terms that REST or GraphQL could not do?
Right. I think the big deal is that all in one code base, you can have your front and back end be type safe. It's really easy to, for particularly the RESTful API, to pass a number when you thought you were passing a string or something like that, and you have to build all sorts of validations and create smart errors and stuff like that for when you're not meeting the spec of the API, when someone requests that API with the wrong things. And tRPC is, I mean, it's not impossible to still get it wrong, but it makes it a lot more hard to get it wrong because in your code, it's part of the constraints of your code through TypeScript. We're going to end up with, you know, statements in code that says you can only pass a string here. Like if you try to pass a number, you're going to get yelled at in your editor before anything ever makes it to runtime, before your users start feeling the effects of that looseness. And traditionally, this is a problem that something like GraphQL solves, where you can, understand the types ahead of time and, wire TypeScript into GraphQL. GraphQL and I think tRPC, where tRPC comes in, is specifically in a monorepo context. tRPC works really, really well, and then TypeScript specifically, so that you can keep those types tight. GraphQL particularly shines when you have many, many consumers or many data sources and you want to get them all tied together.
Mhm.
There's a lot that GraphQL is great for. tRPC is by no means, the GraphQL killer.
Okay.
Using the right tool for the right job at the right time. So, in particular, tRPC is going to be when you're using TypeScript in a monorepo. Um, there are other really advanced ways to use it in a multi monorepo setup, but um, that's a little more rare.
Mm, interesting. So I'm guessing the T in tRPC is for TypeScript. Oh, yeah, is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. And like you said, using the right tool for the job. So it doesn't have to be any of these technologies could be the death of the other. You just have to pick it based on your constraint and what you want. Like you said, if you're using TypeScript already and you're in the monorepo using any of the monorepo tools out there to set it up, you could just opt in for that because you could now share those types, right? And you get to catch the errors before you even run because your editor is going to scream at you and be like, whoa, you're supposed to pass the number here, you're passing the string. And it just sort of like give you that confidence that your data, because I think the whole idea of this entire setup is more of the types of our data being what we want them to be and not by any means because of our errors or something else getting the wrong types. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I mean, by all means, RESTful, GraphQL,
Yeah.
tRPC, gRPC, they're all different
Hmm.
tools for different jobs. So this is hopefully one that just brings a lot of DX to the plate when you are um, in the right situation.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think we that's enough backstory as to why you should use tRPC. So yeah, I've like I said, I've never been able to get my hands dirty in it. So you're gonna be like showing me how it's used, and I'm definitely gonna be probing because I have a little question. Like I said, I still use REST today, so I'm gonna like be open minded and just see the strength of tRPC. So yeah, are you ready to like show me? I think you have like a demo of what we're working on, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, so I'm sharing your screen
Uh,
now.
okay, cool. So yeah, what we're going to try to get to today is, oops, I'm going the wrong direction.
Okay.
Is this is a super simple micro app, Madlib. I don't know if that's purely an American term or not, but you can give some
Mhm.
parameters here. So Kelvin, 123, and
Mhm.
cats, and then it will spit out for us. There's
Oh,
apparently four
okay.
template strings, and we'll end up with cats is something that Kelvin loves so much that he has 123 of them, and hopefully it'll
Mm.
give me. There you go. So we can end up with kind of a random
Okay.
string that inserts our own
Mm-hmm.
inputs. So
Nice.
that's where we'll end up. This ends up being a pretty decent demonstration because I can um, over time mess with the type that we're going to request to the server. So yeah, that's where we're going to end up just as a to get started. Let me start up my app here. So um, I'm going to, you can see hello client. Looks like everything's working. So
Mm-hmm.
um, what I have here, just to talk about what we're starting with. This is like a minimal tRPC Next.js setup. If we go ahead, and I haven't pulled up the docs yet, but if I go ahead and open up the tRPC.io docs, and using Next.js. Ultimately, what I have here is the recommended file structure and the way things get put together. I'm not going to spend too much. This is probably the one thing about tRPC that
Okay.
is a little bit annoying. Getting set up is, I think there's like 5 steps on here, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a decent amount of code, but a lot of it can be copy pasted. So I'm just going to like walk through the files that are here, and we can get to the point of like understanding, why this is fun to use and why this is a nice, why this is good DX,
Okay.
instead of walking through a bunch of boilerplate. But
Mm-hmm.
really quickly, installing some dependencies. Um, tRPC by itself works great, But when you're working like with React and Next.js in particular, it works really well to use React Query with tRPC. If you're not familiar with React Query, I think if I hover here, it'll give me a little blurb. Hooks for managing caching and syncing asynchronous and remote data in React.
Oh,
That's kind of a long way of saying fetching data from a server in a way that feels good.
okay.
So tRPC is going to get used with React Query. Zod is another member of this small ecosystem to make things work pretty well. TypeScript, schema declaration, and validation library with static inference. All that's saying is if you pass data through
Mm-hmm.
where we've written Zod code, it'll throw errors if it's not the expected shape. So if you write that you want an object and you pass a string, you'll get yelled at, both in your editor and while your program is running. So,
Nice.
and then there's a couple of tRPC deps in here. Those are just to get tRPC wired where you need them, a client for fetching data, Next in there to work with Next, React Query to work with React Query, and server to handle everything that happens on the server side. So just a couple dependencies there. Excuse me. Um, Compiler options for tsconfig. Strict, long story short, just makes TypeScript more strict, more angry, so that you make less mistakes. And then the next thing is we start to get to the actual magic on your server. In this little bit of boilerplate, you're going to initialize tRPC, nothing too fancy there. This is, making the server exist. And then you're going to have a public procedure. This is creating and to use RESTful words endpoint,
Mm-hmm.
um, where your server can run some code. This is a router, so again, much like if you're coming from Express or really any other server, you got to create routes, right? So that's what we'll do once we make it there. And then middlewares, I'm not sure if we'll have enough time to make it here, but you can run middlewares if you're familiar with Express middlewares and probably whatever you're building with, or to create your RESTful APIs. Middlewares, same idea. So that's those two parts. And then this is where the actual magic happens. This is where uh, your server is running code. So to dive a little deeper on this bit, we have the app router. This is kind of the typical way of calling the root router, like the one where all your lower down routers are going to get put up into this app router. So um, that's what you usually find here. So we're defining a router, and it looks like so you get to create this object, right? And all of the properties within this object map to routes within your router. This is probably sounding a little opaque by now. Once we start using it, it feels really really nice. But just as background,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a router. It has a greeting route in it. It takes some input. It looks like it's an object with a name property in it that's supposed to be a string, and then it's going to do some query work, and it looks like it returns a text with a string in it using the input of your name. That's kind of the way I read that. We'll walk through it a little deeper in a minute, but just more boilerplate that we're not playing with yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is you have your server code, and you have to get it wired to Next.js API routes. And to do that, you create a catch-all here at API/tRPC braces tRPC for a catch-all. And then what ends up happening is tRPC does some magic to spread your router into that catch-all route. So all of those routes that you were defining in your app router suddenly exist. Um, you just don't have to write them out all individually.
Nice.
And then the last thing you'll have to do is you create the actual hooks. This is a bunch of code that makes tRPC work on the client. We don't really got to worry about it. It's all set up for us and ready to go. So once we have all that, we can go ahead and wrap our actual application with tRPC, and then we can make an API request. So let's take a look at the way that the client interacts with the server in tRPC. I'm going to go ahead and actually open uh, the app right here. No, excuse me, that is our finished one.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was a lot of boilerplate, and I glossed over a lot of it. But I want to spend our time actually writing code and interacting with and feeling the developer experience, instead of talking about boilerplate that is right there in the docs. You can copy paste most of it, not really worry about it like ever. Um, so that's the fun part. tRPC greeting. What you see here is this tRPC utility that we're bringing from where we created those hooks. And what you can see here is right now I have a bunch of type safety. And so if I do go to definition right here, it's going to go ahead and bring me straight to my server code, which is really nice, actually. It's sometimes hard to actually grok, like while you're writing your browser code, um, you know, you got to go find the actual endpoint that you're, using. But I can just go to definition right here, and here I am. So that's really convenient. Um, and so, yeah, it looks like we are using that greeting procedure that I mentioned before, and we're making the query, and we have client in here. And then some typical React code. It's loading when it's loading. I believe, if I remember right, I have it so that this is delayed slightly. I think it should be. Let me see. I want to see that loading state, but it looks like I am not throttling. Oh, it should be. Well, we'll get there.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I can change this to be hello Kelvin, and when I save, you'll see that the server returned that new. Oh, you know what it is? I already forgot about it. There is an SSR in here that I'll show you guys. Let's see, right there.
Okay.
And now I should get a loading state. That was supposed to be a secret. We weren't supposed to know about that yet, but we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
um, So yeah, you'll see a little bit of a loading flash there. That is the client requesting the server. Nothing new there. But you can see that I get type safety here. So if I do that, I instantly get yelled at. I can't even make this mistake, right? I was mentioning before, number versus string,
Mm-hmm.
and there you have it. There's the proof. If I have this name property and it's supposed to be a string, now all of a sudden it's a number. And when I go ahead and change it back, it'll be happy with me again. Everything's going to work again. So that's really nice. Of course, in this little contrived example,
Mm-hmm.
there's not too much there that's too scary, but um, you can imagine that if you're in a large complex app, there's a lot to keep track of. And if you change something on the client or on the server, you want to know about it way ahead of time before your users ever see it. You won't even be able to compile if you have your types wrong. So yeah, that's super nice. And the other thing that I can kind of show off here is if I open these on the sides of each other, looks like it's a little too big to be too convenient. But for instance, so how does this client code understand um, where the use query is taking parameters? Um, in this input, we have a Zod object here. And so if I change this around to use some other string, some foo, I'm going to see this change over here, and it's going to say, hey, this argument is of the type name, but it's supposed to be foo. So once I change this back to foo, then we're happy again. Additionally, here inside the query, we get yelled at already. We're seeing, hey, name doesn't exist on input. As a matter of fact, this is typed as well. And so input foo exists. So let me change that again. Okay, now we're back to happy. Now our code compiles again. Another thing that I can do is I can add maybe some amount here. And I can do z number. And look at that. All of a sudden, now we are getting yelled at again. It looks like amount is missing. So that's pretty convenient. I'm going to actually change this back to name here just because of where we're going to end up with making our mad lib. So that is all. Okay, and then I need to add an amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amount. I'm not going to do anything with this amount, but we can see here now that the type safety is saving me. Is there anything I'm leaving out there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I was rambling.
It's actually very good to see how the types can be cut between the clients and the server. So if you change something on the server, you get to see, okay, you have to update this. So I see how convenient it is. It's really, really convenient. I like.
Right. Yeah. And so, and I think the thing that's really really nice here is if I go ahead and try to build my application, I'm gonna instantly know like I didn't ship this. Like I'm not finding out later that um, I forgot to put an amount on this query. So I think that's the part that I really appreciate is I get to catch stuff sooner, which is always good.
Yeah, it
um,
is.
Yeah. So, let's see. So, what more interesting stuff can we do here? I'm just gonna add a data here, and it looks like I only get text back. Okay. So, and this is the part that's even more convenient. I was just under the wrong impression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was thinking that I had already brought back whatever this number is, but I totally didn't. I'm just gonna pass through here the amount, and we're gonna go here, and we're gonna have numbers. So now we can see that I can, start to work with a changing procedure
Mm-hmm.
rather quickly. I can understand where I'm making a mistake if I'm not paying attention close enough. I think something that I probably have left out here is this use query right here. Again, that's React query, and going back to React query. If you're not familiar with React query, there's a little bit extra to learn there. But we're learning tRPC right now, not React query. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
I'd give you a whole bunch of awesomeness about React query. But
Okay.
long story short, if I do something like this, and what will happen here is that React Query is going to notice that I'm making this same request twice with name Anthony and amount 123. And it will only make one request, and both result in another result will end up meaning the same thing. There's a lot of other really fancy stuff that you can do with React Query, and they're right here. They're in a second optional parameter to use query. And you can do stuff like enabling the query when you have some other piece of data. You can give it context. If we have time, I'll visit that. You can do stuff when the request is successful or errorful, placeholder data. So there's a lot that you can do with the React query options. We're just going to keep it simple though. Um, so you can see here result data. There's some other fun stuff here on result. As you can see here, there's actually result data again, but and this is all again coming from React Query. There's is fetched, is loading, is paused, is refetching. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can do to create different rendering patterns, and so that gets really convenient too. Um, so, with all that in mind, let's build an app, shall we?
Yeah.
So, like I said, we were going to end up here. I think the first thing I'm going to do, actually, before I even start, is pnpm install pico css slash pico, and then I'm going to go over here to my app folder, and I'm going to import app pico css slash css. Oh, looks like I'm getting a nextjs update.
Oh yeah.
And then I think once I restart, oh, there we go. Okay, so if I restart again, if you're not familiar with Pico CSS, it just makes things look decently normal before you ever even um, write Pico. I wrote the wrong thing. Um, now we're good. There we go. It just assigns a little bit of CSS stuff. You don't even have to write CSS. So we're going to write very little CSS so we can stay focused on tRPG. So let's see. To make our little Mad Lib, it looks like we're going to need like a name, a number, and some noun. So let's go ahead and make that. Our server route here is, oh, oops. Okay, sure, got messed up. So our server out here needs to be able to take, it looks like I actually cheated a little bit. It needs to be able to take a name, an
Mm-hmm.
amount, and what was the last thing I was saying? Some kind of like noun, I guess.
Yeah. Now.
So the string. So now we've added a little bit more to this object. As we can see, our client is yelling at us right now, but we're not worried about that yet. And we want to be able to make a string that ends up being replacing our. I'm just going to do this real quick. Sorry.
Mhm.
Open somewhere. Maybe not. Okay, never mind. I have my cheat sheet, but it's okay. I'm going to end up making some string, and here we can do this and steal that from there instead of stealing it from my other editor. I should have opened it before. We'll go here, we'll go like this. And what I need to end up doing is replacing, instead of your name, instead of a number here, and instead of what you have there, instead of hard coding those, we're going to end up using the name mountain noun. So we'll go replaced string is equal to string, but replace something that looks like name with your name. This will be input.name. And then we're going to also replace, let's see, the number with input.number. And then we're going to also replace, this last one is noun, with my input.noun. And it looks like, okay, let's see, what did I mess up? Number isn't what it's called. It's called amount. So thank you, tRPC. And that's still even wrong. I want number is not assignable to string. Okay, so now we're finding out something even more interesting. We can't replace we can't use a number to replace in a string. So we're going to have to adjust for that. We're going to have to go string here. And while this will be a number, we're going to make it look like a string. And then we're going to, I think we're going to return that. And then if I go over here and we fix up our client code, so remember amount now needs to be a string. So I'm going to handle that there. And then the noun is going to be cats. So let's see. Okay, cool. So I at least made it there. Nice. I'm going to remove this styles just because it's going to start clashing with what we have. And then, okay, so we have a little bit of mad libbiness here. I can change that to Kelvin, but we're still running only on, use query. Like I'm loading the page, like we need like a form or something, right? So let's build a quick little form. I'm going to do form. I'm going to do input, make some inputs here. Sorry, this is going to be a little bit of boilerplate as far as just what you got to do with React. So a little bit of React code, use state, and we're going to need const, like a name, set name equals use state, and that'll end up being a string. And we're going to have number, so let's set the number, and that'll be 0. And what was the last thing? We needed a noun to like throw in there. Excuse me. Set noun, and that one's back to a string as well. And then this value is going to end up being name. I'm going to make HTML for name. Sorry, this is probably not terribly interesting, but gotta do it.
Mm-hmm. It's
Gotta
fine.
make a form.
Yes, you are.
Name and on change, and we go here, and whatever this is, set the name to e.target.value. Okay, and so that should set us up for a name. It looks like I didn't add the label here. Okay, so that's pretty close. I think I can give this class equals container, and then it will like, there we go. Cool, class name, my bad. Okay, so now we have that one. Now I'm just going to have to do that same thing for each of these different inputs. So a little quicker this time. This is a number. This is going to be the number. Did I call it number? I called it number. Okay, cool. Set number. And it looks like Okay, interesting. So this is more TypeScript yelling at me. I have an
Mhm.
input. I'm using I should be doing a type equal to a number. Let's see if that fixes it. Okay, no. So quick memory. Uh, a value is always a string, but this number is looking for a number. So I should actually be using a string there, and then we're good. So let's see if that continues to play out well. Um, and then the last thing I'll need is a noun and noun. Have I missed any of these? A little bit of
Mm.
both. Okay,
Type
cool.
number is not.
Looks like I missed a number there, huh? There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I had to miss one at some point.
Also, the type, I think
Okay,
you have to update that.
what's that?
The type is still number. I think we're expecting a noun, so just type text. The last input, you have a type of number.
Type of number. Okay, perfect.
Mm.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh,
I
sure.
was gonna miss one, right? Yeah, I'm just gonna remove it. It'll no
Mm.
text
Yeah, of
automatically.
course.
And I need to throw a button in here, submit, and let's see. Actually, so yeah, this is the part where we get to where we're like, okay, now what do we do, right? We had queries that were running, and they were fetching data, and that's all great. But now we have a form. Like we need to, send data and ask the server when we want to do something instead of just running when things start off. So or things render, excuse me. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually rather simple, mutation. And all of a sudden, instead of this being like an instant query, this turns into something that we ask for to run. Excuse me, pardon my typos.
Mhm.
So now I'm going to get uh, a little bit of a different look there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this loading state just because it's going to be interrupting what we're up to. And I'm going to change the name of the form. It's going to be like Mad Libs or whatever. So now this use mutation is going to wait for us to ask for it to do something. So the way that you end up using this is you're going to go ahead and do like const handle form submit or something like that. And oops, typo. Now I lost the whole thing. Const handle form equals uh, so result right here, now it looks a little bit different. It has a mutate right here. And so what this does is this actually performs the request. So if I have mutate here, and you can see that the variables it's looking for are that name, amount, and noun. So if I go ahead and open up, okay, so we have them right there. I'm going to do name is, well, I guess it's going to be the same there. So amount, this is actually number, and then noun. Okay, cool. So now we have our form handler. It looks, I'm going to need to do e.prevent default for the form there. Here's e. Actually, you know what? I don't know. I don't think I will. We'll find out if my page is re-rendering.
Mhm.
And then down here, I'm going to go on click, um, and we're going to have handle form. And once we do that, I should be able to request this whenever I want. So Anthony, 123, hats. I don't know. And it looks like, okay, so my form is doing what it's supposed to. I'm going to be honest, I'm just going to drop the form here because that's not what we care about right now.
Okay.
And so it looks like Anthony, 123, shoes, submit. I don't know what's going to happen here. Let's see. My results, let me inspect here. Did I create any errors? I didn't. Okay, so I think everything happened as I hoped it would. Let's see. I'm wondering if I should be down here. Maybe I'll do like a paragraph and result dot data dot the text that we're going to get back. Okay, so it did work. I just hadn't rendered it. So yeah, there you go. I, Anthony, can count to 123 using units of shoes. And so now if I do Kelvin, we're going to the server there. And just to show you once again, because this is a mutation, we're not doing this request when we show this page. Instead of doing that, we are using it when we submit this form. So there's nothing there yet. And now we do cats, and there we go. So that's a lot of the basics of tRPC. I know I talked a lot. Did I miss anything? Is anything unclear there?
No, it's actually really good. I think I like it. But I have one question. I think maybe it's intentional, but back in the server you were using dot replace, and I was thinking, is there a reason why you weren't going for like a template string? Or
Um, I could have done a template string,
okay,
sure.
yeah,
I think if I do here, let's do that way. Sure.
yeah. So
Uh,
I was just thinking it might probably be more work.
I remember the first time that I did this, there was a specific reason that I did that,
Yes,
but
exactly. So that's
I
why
can't
I was
really
like
think of
gonna
what it was right
find
now.
out. Okay, we're just gonna find out like, okay, what
Oh,
worked
you know what
for.
it is? I remember what it is all of a sudden.
Okay.
Um, there's going to be a second iteration of this that we do
Oh,
where
okay.
we won't be able to use a template string.
Oh, perfect. Got it.
That's a good call out though.
Yeah,
If I were to use only this string over and over, then yes, I would have used a template string.
got it.
But we can make this a little bit more dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
and we can kind of demonstrate a query and a mutation all on the same page, so you can really
Okay,
see the difference. So that
perfect.
was why I wasn't using a template string.
Yeah,
Yes, I should
that's
have said
fine.
that before.
That's fine. Good. I like it.
um, Cool. Yeah. So I think that kind of shows the power of like when you're working through perhaps, I kind of started at like, oh, my feature is in this state.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make it more robust. And as I made it more robust,
Okay.
I, was getting yelled at all along the way. So
Okay.
I think that kind of really shows it off nicely.
Yeah, and
Um,
so for my restful mind, the when you did dot query is like a get request,
right.
right? Then dot mutation is
Yeah.
like a post, right? That makes sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's the tRPC spec. Actually, what it does underneath the hood, as far as its HTTP stuff,
Mm-hmm.
is actually right here. The way that this works is there's only gets and posts.
Okay.
And so yes, like you just said, a query is a get and a mutation is a post.
Okay.
Um, and so one thing that folks kind of get hung up on, if you really, really like RESTful implementations,
Mm-hmm.
um, tRPC under the hood doesn't follow a typical HTTP spec. It uses a different RPC spec, remote
Okay.
procedure call spec. And so gets and posts. You won't find deletes or whatever else, puts
Yeah.
or
Put
anything like
patch head.
patch, right.
Yeah.
You won't
All the
find
stuff.
those other things. All of that is, if you've noticed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have, uh, all of those things are abstracted away from me. I don't even really have to care
Yeah.
about which verbs are getting used. How am I passing? Is this a query param or is it a, what a part of the payload, stuff like that?
Mm.
Everything's really kind of just done one way.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of the mental overhead of like I said, do I put this in a query param? Is it part of the payload? Which verb am I using? It just kind of abstracts all of that stuff away and just says, hey, focus on moving the data that you need to move and creating the UI that you need to do, create the server code that you need to do. So yeah, I personally appreciate that. If you like I was saying, not everything's a silver bullet, but that's
Mm-hmm.
something I love about TRC.
Yeah. And since you're sort of like using it from your client, if you're even going to do something like a query param or a route param, you could just take it from like next.js and pass it down when you make the mutation or the use query, right?
You mean as far as so like sure,
Mm-hmm.
if you had like I'm trying to think of like an ID, right?
Yeah.
Is this what you're describing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You just
So
pass it from next.
right,
Mm-hmm.
if you had a route that you had an ID that you needed to use, yeah, you would pull it out. Oops. you would pull it
Yeah.
out of your route, and you could
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and drop it in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it works really the same. I like it.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I thought of something in between there, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh, really?
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more time do we have. I
We
can
have
go a couple of different directions.
10 minutes, but we could go like 10 more if you have the time for it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think in 10 minutes we
Mm,
can do.
mm,
I can kind of just show off like multiple routes. We've been working with one
okay.
route here, and it's kind of nice to take a moment to um, you know
Yeah.
see several. So
Mm-hmm.
let's do. I'm trying to think of what we can do here. By the way, I had been naming this greeting. Let's do like construct madlib. And oh, wait a minute, I'm seeing an error over here. Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. Okay, so this works with in the same way that our payloads were
Mm-hmm.
yelling at us.
The rats also, yes.
Our router will yell at us as well. So we'll make sure that we're always aligned to the routes that we have in our router.
Interesting.
Again, something that coming from RESTfulness or GraphQL or whatever, some of those things can get out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I just love that. I love getting caught out when I'm not paying attention.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so let's see. What's something we can do here? I think we can make this string a little bit more dynamic. Maybe I can come up with like two different strings that get spat out, right? Like two different templates. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do like const. Let's make like some templates here. And this was why I was ending up using, why I wrote this way. I was cheating.
Mm-hmm.
I should have, like I said, I should have said before.
Yeah.
um, so I have that. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to count templates, for instance. And we're going to use another public procedure. And this is going to be a query because we need to, um, find out how many templates am I going to have. Just for instance, I'll add another one here. And I'm going to do name loves noun. I don't know. Name loves having number noun. That won't be perfect, but it'll work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, okay, there we go. So now we have two different templates that we can insert our inputs into. And then I'm going to return templates.length here. Okay, so you might notice that this doesn't really need any input, right? We're just asking for like how many templates are there going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
that should be relatively simple. Let's go ahead and find out if I'm right. Template count equals tRPC, count the templates, use query, and okay, so I don't have to pass an input, so that seems good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do p, and I'll do template count. Oh, that's not right. Okay, so template count dot data. Uh, Maybe that's right. Okay, so now I got my two.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I'll do there are blank available templates. And there we go. We have it. Cool. Okay. And then the only thing left to do there is making this a little bit more dynamic. So we can do, let's see, we can go const, an index. I'm going to forget what this code is just instantly. I'm going to steal it from myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of math dot random and some more stuff. Yeah.
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 Let's see. Where's my other? I need another VS code. Where'd it go? I don't feel like thinking about it. Let's see. Can I do it off the top of my head? Math, random, math. Probably not. On the spot. Not smart enough. Not smart enough.
Okay. Yeah.
I need. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna act like I'm smart. Take it off of here. Go over here and TKYT and
Yeah. I think would you having like an array dot prototype dot random just give you a random item so you don't have to do this.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Math.random. Um, here's what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll just cheat and go like this. Since we know we have, um, I'll just do a coin flip.
Yeah,
One or
okay.
two. Since we
So,
only have two, that'll work.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I'm gonna do const templates and the index template to use equals templates. And then I'm going to replace the string here. So there you go. That was why I ended up doing that in the first place.
Mhm.
So Kelvin and 1, 2, 3 and shoes. So there you go. Now you can see we got that one that time. And if I click again, looks like I'm gonna keep getting the same one. Come on, come on, coin flip. Don't fail me now. Hats. Oh, looks like I bugged it. What did I do?
Okay. I think
Um,
we could just let me I think I could give you the code.
ooh, yeah, little phone a friend.
Yeah, phone a friend, right? So probably math.floor, I think.
Yeah, there's some floor that comes in there and stuff.
Yeah, math.floor,
It's all right.
then yeah.
I think ultimately we can just
But I
yeah.
feel we could do math.floor, open bracket, math.random times items.length.
Okay. Math dot floor, math random,
Mm-hmm. Then
uh,
multiply by the what our templates.length, I think.
templates online.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Let's
Let's
see.
see if that works.
There you go. You got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we have it being a little more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I now that you
Okay.
thought for me.
That's fine. We we work together.
Yeah,
That's some pair programming magic.
I love
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Awesome.
So yeah, now we have on the same page kind
Mm-hmm.
of a demonstration of here's a query and here's a mutation, and of course we have these um, we have the query happening right at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the page
Mm-hmm.
being rendered, but we don't have that um, until we ask for the mutation on the mutation side. One thing that you might notice is as I refresh here, you might notice a quick little loading state right here
Yeah. Did see
flashing.
that. Yeah.
Right. And so this template count here, what ends up happening is if I go ahead and do this, if template count dot data, excuse me, template
Mm-hmm.
count dot data, and then return, and then div and loading. Maybe this will make it a little more clear. You can see the whole page is flashing now. So what's happening there is I'm running all this locally, and there isn't a lot of there's any data fetch or anything. So this is pretty fast, and
Mm-hmm.
so this flicker is pretty quick. But if you were fetching data from a database or something like that, you would end up with a loading state here. But what
Mm-hmm.
we can do with tRPC is we can make sure that we server side render. If I could be smart enough to find the right spot, we can server side render down here, SSR true. So if I turn that on, you're never going to see a loading state now.
Wow.
I'm hard refreshing, sorry. You're never going to see a loading state now. And that's because tRPC is making sure that the data from this template count is being rendered on the server. And so you'll never see that loading state on your client. So
That's
one
interesting.
quick little flip of the switch there, and you
Yeah.
get a server side rendering.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. So I was gonna ask, when you mention databases, how does the setup go? Like, let's say I want to use like Postgres, I don't know,
Mhm.
MySQL. Like, what's gonna
Right.
change to do all that?
Yeah. So what ends up happening if you're going to introduce data fetching or introduce a database, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we typically recommend that folks do that is with Prisma. It just kind of happens to be the one that a lot of folks are really happy with. And what ends up happening is Prisma itself is very strongly typed. And so when you bring, if you were to make some Prisma call here, this is going to be really unhappy with me. Prisma, excuse me, await Prisma
Okay.
dot, right. When you write your Prisma call, you'll end up with your data here, and that data
Oh.
will be strongly typed. And when you give it to your payloads and you give it to tRPC, it'll also be strongly typed. So that's the nice thing about tRPC for me is as long as the other tools that you're using are strongly typed, tRPC is just going to handle it. It's going to pass the typings that are in your mutation, your query, your input. As
Mm.
long as those types are correct, with the other tools that you're using, tRPC is going to let those pass through from server to client really, really cleanly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, if you're using an ORM, you've got Postgres hooked up to Prisma. If you add it to your routes and your routers and your routers, they'll come through with that strong typing and whatever other strong typing you may happen to be using.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you have this whole ecosystem of typed tools come together to like really make your code type safe. So you got
Right.
tRPC, which is sort of like the master of ceremony. Use it for Zod and React Query. Then of Prisma, if you're going to do, of course, a very non simple app is going to need like a database access, whether you're going to make some
Right.
API calls or whatever it's going to do. But it makes complete sense, and I feel it's the way to go if you're already using TypeScript. You're in a mono repo. You like using Zod, a React query, and you don't want like a separate endpoint, right? You could just do this and it works. You get a full stack type safe app. I like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, excuse me, I think another nice thing too here is there's next to no runtime impact that comes along with tRPC. Like, um, it's mostly a TypeScript layer around the things that you were already writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's not a lot of runtime here. There you might see some things, at really really large scales, just with TypeScript having to do a lot of work, right? We're earning, in editor while we're building the application, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of safety here for ourselves. But if you're going to do a type check, now we've added a lot of TypeScript and safety and communication between the server and the client. So your TypeScript check might take longer if you're coming from something that isn't strongly typed like that.
Okay.
Um, but I personally will take that.
Yeah.
I like the quick feedback loop that I have here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very good crash course you've given because I think I understand, like, not deeper into like the weeds of tRPC, Zod, and all that, but conceptually, like, I know what to do if I want to do a query, which maps to like a get request, want to do like a mutate or change something, I use the mutation, and everything makes a lot of sense, especially if your team or you yourself like TypeScript already, you've been typing your code. So this is the way to go. If you're going to build full stack apps, I think I like it. It does make a lot of sense. There's no need to have the managing two separate repos. Since you're in a mono repo, you could just use the type safety all along, and it saves you. And it's very very convenient because when you update something in the server, you get to like see the warnings that, whoa, you need to do this. The type does not match and all that. Very convenient. I like it.
That's good. I'm glad
Hmm.
and just as a call out, this was kind of the crash course to
Yeah,
tRPC.
definitely.
There was a lot that we didn't get to cover that's really really cool. Middlewares,
Yeah.
error handling,
Mm-hmm.
how to handle authentication is actually pretty simple once you've got this mental model going
Mm-hmm.
with contexts. You can actually create an open API spec
Wow.
for your tRPC router, so you can end up with folks who can interact with the procedures that you're writing, and so you end up with actual get put poke patch that if somebody who isn't in your monorepo wants to go ahead and interact with your procedures, they can do that, and they don't have to meet this spec. They can end up with something that's more traditional
Mm-hmm.
in that RESTful architecture. Yeah, there's a ton in here that is super
Yeah.
super convenient, but yeah, that's the crash course.
Yeah, definitely. The session is actually titled Getting Started, right? So we're not really going to go down into it. We could have another goal, maybe sometime like do something more sophisticated, like have like a concept app and just build like a demo from top to bottom and see the strength and how it plays out in a very complex application. But I'm good with this. I think I like this crash course. I have more ideas than I've had before now, so I think I'm in the know, so to speak. So yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, for your time. Um, so if I see this video and I want to reach out to you, where can I reach out to you to like maybe ask some questions, tRPC or what?
Let's see. If you want to find me,
Mm-hmm.
my Twitter handle is Anthony Shew, just with an extra W on Twitter. What else? tRPC.io is a great place. This documentation is really really good. We're working on making it, uh, just better every day, frankly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, go to tRPC.io. As I mentioned, there's a Next.js getting started. Excuse me, I'm clicking around. Um, and it can work with not even just Next.js. You can use it with Express. You can use it with Svelte. You can use it with, there's a whole bunch of adapters. So if you
Mm.
did see me using Next.js this whole time, you don't want to use Next.js, feel free. But yeah, tRPC.io, and then visit us on GitHub. We're always looking for folks to help out, or if you want to find out more about the internals and really want to become a TypeScript wizard with us, there's a bunch to learn about in there. So, um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say those are probably the places.
Yeah, sure thing. So so for having you on the session, you can plug in anything you want to plug, like announcements or call to action for folks. So do you have any of those you want to plug in?
um, I think the only thing I can think of is Alex.js on Twitter. He is Mr. tRPC,
Okay.
total TypeScript genius. And follow him. And if you love tRPC, he's definitely the person to thank. So send him good vibes. There's also a tRPC Discord if you want to get
Yeah.
more involved. And all those things you can find here on tRPC.io. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess those are my plugs.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Anthony, for this session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.